It takes two to grow, to glow, to tango. China and Russia friendship, essentially a partnership. World Insight takes you closer to both the 2019 St. Petersburg International Economic Forum and Sino-Russian relations.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you from St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. It's been a fruitful trip as Chinese President Xi Jinping wrapped up his three-day visit in Russia on Friday. A cruise tour on the Neva River with Russian President, an honorary doctorate degree for President Xi from a Russian university, and a trade memorandum and a 5G deal. They all point to the willingness of the two neighbors for more cooperation. Economy, diplomacy, security, tourism, and education, you name it, various fields. In his speech before the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Chinese President Xi Jinping also reiterated China's firm belief in multilateral system. Is the world moving closer or away from that goal? We ask our panelists, all participants of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. But before that, this first.
An honorary doctorate was awarded to President Xi on Thursday as he attended a ceremony at President Putin's alma mater, the St. Petersburg State University. During his remarks, Putin said the academia plays a big part in bilateral exchanges and that more talents are needed for successful collaborations between Russia's Eurasian Economic Union and China's Belt and Road Initiative. Earlier, Xi and Putin signed two joint communiques. They agreed to provide each other strategic assistance on security, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. They also promised further cooperation in multiple fields and reached an agreement on arms control and nuclear disarmament. The trip also included a number of cultural events, such as a gala celebrating 70 years of diplomatic ties between China and Russia, and the opening of Moscow Zoo's Panda House. 3-year-old Ruyi and 2-year-old Dingding arrived in the Russian capital in late April from southwestern China's Sichuan province. Zookeepers hope to see the young couple start a family soon in their newfound home. And with the increase in cultural exchanges between China and Russia, collaborations in film have seen a boom. The 2019 Chinese Film Festival kicked off on Friday in St. Petersburg. An immediate exchange activity took place on the sidelines of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Over the years, relations between China and Russia have become more fruitful and vibrant beyond politics, a partnership that has led to significant, tangible achievements.
And that, of course, is the latest happening at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. In fact, the two presidents, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, are still in the plenary session in which the two presidents attend together with other VIPs at the forum. For now, let's go to Carl Fei, Professor of International Business at Aalto University. He's joining us here on the site of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. What a pleasure seeing you, Professor, once again.
Thanks very much. It's nice to be here.
Thank you, sir. You were joining earlier in the Energy Summit of the forum. So help me to understand the key messages delivered by the two presidents at the energy session also today, and how is that related to all the discussions here?
So I think actually energy cooperation is probably the backbone of Russia-China trade. China is a net consumer of different resources such as oil and gas, and Russia is, of course, very highly endowed in these resources. So I think there's a lot of really good possibilities for collaboration. At the same time, I think both countries are striving now to make sure that they're simply not importing and producing simple products, but adding more value. So I think this is another commonality that both Russia and China have.
Talking about adding more value, 5G development certainly is a very exciting field, and it also has been quite controversial among some economies. But Professor, Both sides signed a deal in Moscow about 5G development provided by Huawei in Russia for 1 year at least. Also, during the speeches given by Chinese President Xi Jinping at the plenary session, he promised that China is willing to cooperate with others about 5G too.
Yeah, so of course this is a really hot topic with the challenges that Huawei is currently facing. I actually think that Huawei is being treated unfairly. Huawei, I think, is one of the Chinese companies that actually has been developing the way you would like to see companies develop. They've really been upgrading their management practices. They've been investing in technology. In fact, a number of years ago, as you know, they had a little bit of a disagreement with Cisco about technology. And Huawei really learned a lot from that, and since then has really been investing in their technology more than anyone else. Right. And so the fact that the Russian operator MTS, which is what you were talking about, has decided to pursue Huawei's 5G technology, I think makes a lot of good sense moving forward.
And of course, the two presidents also talked about the world orders. And I guess at this special session going on right now, they're still in discussion about it. But the question really is how, right? With the upcoming G20, many really wonder what that discussion will be like. From the messages it just delivered, where do you think is it?
Well, you know, I'm actually American, despite mostly working these days with China and Russia. And so obviously the U.S. actions with China are of great interest to me. I'm sorry to say that I'm not a particularly strong supporter of U.S. policy in this area. I think that the U.S. and China, I think that the U.S., which has historically been the real proponent of an open world order and flexibility, now in fact has been backing off and obviously being much more closed. What will happen in the G20 meeting? It's really hard to say, but I think unfortunately it's unlikely that we're going to see a quick resolution to this.
Yeah, but you know, some of the principles are extremely important these days. They were with us earlier when countries were working on the globalization, but whether those principles are still going to be valid and people are still going to hold on to it, it's a big question mark. Needs a lot of work, at least according to the Armenian Prime Minister that I talked to on the sideline of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Nico Pashinyan, that's his name. He's talking about several principles: global compromise, global cooperation, and global respect. Let's listen in to some of the excerpts of that exclusive interview. What does that mean to a country like Armenia when you see your neighbors, in a way, China and Russia, are having closer ties? What opportunities and what vision do you think is important for Armenia looking at the latest movements?
As a chair country in the Eurasian Economic Union, we are very interested in cooperation between different projects and different organizations. And we have very good relations with China, we have very good relations with Russia, we have very good relations with the European Union, and we will put our efforts to make cooperation between Eurasian Economic Union, between China, European Union, Iran, even better and effective. And I think the idea is the same, to create a proper atmosphere for global cooperation and for global compromise and global respect. And I think it is very positive move to see the leaders of Russia and China discussing all these issues, and as a chair country in Eurasian Economic Union, we will support these efforts.
Welcome back. You're still watching our special program coming to you from St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Earlier we talked to the Prime Minister of Armenia, and now I'm joined by two guests, Carl Fei, of course we've already met earlier, and also joining us right now, Vadim Khomov. I hope I pronounced your name right, sir, this time, who is the Moscow Region Deputy Prime Minister. What a pleasure to see you here. Actually, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister was just dropping out from the special session that is still going on between the Chinese and the Russian presidents together with other VIPs. What are the key messages that you heard over there? Earlier we were talking about it, but love to have your input as well.
I think the main message is about globalization and how this globalization would go in the future. Then Mr. Putin said that there are differences between the economies in 10 years ago and now, that the new countries get more and more part there in world trade, and in these cases some strong countries make not trade rules in their free trade that was 10 years and 20 years before.
That's right.
And I think that when the Chinese government, Chinese officials and Xi Jinping say that the Russian and Chinese program, the program of, and European country program of
the Belt and Road Initiative?
Yeah, this initiative is very great for new trade and free trade between China, Russia, Europe, and help a lower cost for this trade.
What you talk about, Mr. Kromov, it seems that is a solution, an alternative of solutions that both China and Russia are trying to provide, whether it's a Belt and Road Initiative, which is an initiative started from China's idea, but it's supposed to be a platform, everyone on it going to be a win-win situation. And also the Eurasian Economic Community, or Union as sometimes called, is an idea coming from Russia, but also supposed to be a multilateral platform. Earlier, we have different kinds of multilateral platforms. So how will these emerging economies be able to provide these ideas and implement these ideas? Your thought?
Yeah, I think the implementation of this idea is very good for the economy, very good for one more idea that I heard today. This is the idea of giving to our citizens a less poorless, a good environment, good technology and necessary technology to support the life. Need to be developed there. Green technology everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very interesting what Mr. Konov just said. It's not about necessarily so-called power and hard power of one country or two, but rather how the two economies at a time of critical juncture of the world try to take care of the needs of the people, try to frame the policies in terms of what the demands are coming from the market and from the society, and try to make sure it happens. That's a very interesting transformation we see in policy making, Professor Fei.
Yeah, so two things I'd like to pick up on in this discussion. One is that I think it's really great that we're now seeing a little more balance of power around the world. We're not only seeing the U.S. leading, but in fact recent U.S. actions lead to, I think, strengthening in ties between China and Russia. 25% or so growth in trade over the last year. And the Belt and Road Initiative and the Eurasia Project are two examples of other ways of global collaboration that are useful. The other thing is that international trade is all about specialization. And China and Russia are lucky that they actually complement each other quite well in their needs and what they're strong in. And so I think it's quite natural that these two great neighbors will have more and more trade moving forward. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this develops.
On the other hand, these two economies are all looking at different options. China at this time of an apparent trade war or trade conflict, to say the least, Mr. Kronov, is looking at so many different ways with Japan, with Europe, with Russia, with Southeast Asian countries, with Africa, just to name a few. So to you, how do you see this multiple approach? So it's Russia. Look at the conference this time. China, Germany, other parts of Europe, Japan, India, all present here, big delegation. What does it say? Nordic countries, not to even mention that, sir.
I may say that the partnership between countries need to be developed deeper and deeper. And we need to understand that all countries have their own interests. And we need to balance this interest in trade, in policy, and this is the only way how we may growing up the fruitful development of our economies.
Well, it's beautifully said, but I'm not sure whether everybody support what you have just said. That's why we have problems, right? I mean, Mr. Fei, you come from a country in which now it is providing, some argue, the biggest uncertainty now. So what do you make of, will these emerging economies, developing countries be able to support the stability and sustainability of the current mechanism that we have been embracing for decades?
So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see countries increasingly hesitant to rely totally on just one other country as their partner. We see a number of recent issues with the U.S. now not providing some parts, for example, to Huawei and phones and other things. And this is not only going to play out with China-U.S. I think that while China and Russia are going to have strong relations, I think China's still going to say we want to have some of our activities with Russia, some with the U.S., some with Europe, etc.
Breaking up the global supply chain is going to be quite a dangerous thing that you may know. It takes years to take the place of the already existing global supply chain. It's not an issue of determination. It's an issue of practicality. It's an issue of business running, actually.
That's surely true. And so, as I said, I don't think you're going to see a total switch away from where it is now. What I think you're going to see is companies trying to supplement what they are doing with some new approaches.
I see. And final words from you. We have about 20 seconds left, sir.
What?
About the issue of global supply chain, emerging economies be able to provide more support to it?
Yes, I think.
As simple as that. Okay, there we go. We see some personalities coming from the Russian friends. And thank you so much, both of you. Carl Fei, Professor of International Business at Aalto University, and also we have Vadim Kronov, who is the Moscow Region Deputy Prime Minister. What a pleasure, gentlemen, to see both of you here in our live studio at St. Petersburg International Economic Forum.